It starts with a question. How can we feed ourselves? How can we make our lives better, our work easier, until finally, a breakthrough? What lies beyond the horizon, and how do we get there? What's our place in the universe, and how can we share the things we learn? With every breakthrough, we've made the world smaller. We've built places to live, places to work, and brought people closer. How has every breakthrough started? With something revolutionary, an idea. The idea that all of us should be free, to roam, to dream, to see the world in which we live. The idea that in almost every aspect of life, there's a better way to do something. And so we push ourselves to invent, to break barriers, to be curious, enterprising, and, above all, brave. Has technology made life better? It has. With every breakthrough, we've grown smarter, healthier, more productive. Can we go further? We can. With innovations for business that ultimately will help all of us. At VMware, we're making it possible for computers to self-manage, self-optimize, and self-protect. We're building a cloud platform on the most trusted virtualized infrastructure in the world, delivering performance, scalability, and intelligence. By making IT infrastructure more efficient, we're making business faster, more responsive, ready to meet the demands of tomorrow. So the question now is, what's next?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage VMware Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Paul Maritz.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome all of you who are physically with us today and all of you who are virtually with us today. This is obviously a big day for VMware, which we're taking the next step in the journey towards this more automated world that we're talking about here today. Now, it's no secret that we are in the midst of two very large transformations that are occurring in the IT and digital landscape. On one hand, we're seeing a transformation of IT architectures under this phrase cloud, which is about fundamental reduction in complexity. We need to make infrastructure become something that people can just depend upon and allow them to focus on the things that really make a difference for their businesses. Infrastructure is a means towards an end, and it needs to become fundamentally more automated, easier to manage, less costly to operate. And that transformation we see playing out in terms of the effect of cloud on enterprises in terms of their IT approach to the world. At the same time, we see a transformation occurring in the consumer and digital space from a world of independent devices to a connected world where information is increasingly held centrally. Our personal information is increasingly located in the cloud. And there's an interplay between these two architectures, because many techniques that are being pioneered in the consumer connected mobile space are coming back and having an influence on what's happening in the IT space, and technologies that have been pioneered in the enterprise are actually enabling what's happening in this consumer world. So it's the interplay of these two forces that makes life very interesting. The question, however, is how do businesses navigate their way forward? And the reality for most businesses in the world starts with the enormous investment that they have in existing applications. So those of us who wish to provide a more dynamic infrastructure have to chart forward a course that allows them to take their investment in their existing data centers to enable them to run those existing applications in a more automated fashion and start to open up for those customers the opportunity down the road to purchase the underlying infrastructure that supports those applications according to new business models. tapping into, in particular, external service providers. Now, that means a need for a more flexible, modern infrastructure that can really deliver lower costs of operation. The cost of infrastructure at the end of the day is not the cost of the hardware and the software, it's the cost of operating it. So allowing people to take their resources, aggregate them into larger pools, operate them more efficiently in a more automated manner, and tie that into externally provisioned infrastructure is the fundamental starting point for this journey of transformation. But that's not enough. If businesses stay with their existing applications forever, applications that in many cases were architected for a world of paper bills, where they are not going to be able to address the new Facebook generation. So over the coming decade, we're going to need to see basically a transformation in applications, a new generation of applications that can take full advantage of this efficient infrastructure, which will support both existing applications and a new generation of applications. And then that means we need a new platform for those new applications, a new way of allowing people to more efficiently write and deploy those applications. When you combine that with the third element of change, which is the fact that end users, both inside the enterprise and outside the enterprise, are holding in their hands an increasingly eclectic set of devices. We're entering into the post-PC age, where the laptop is no longer the dominant experience for many users. Businesses have to think, how will they deliver both existing and future applications to users when you can no longer assume automatically that you know in advance the device that that user will hold in his hands, the operating system it'll be running, and in many cases the device won't actually be owned by the enterprise itself. It'll be outside of the physical control of the enterprise. So we need a strategy to deliver the results of these applications to users who are increasingly living in a device-independent, mobile, connected world and continue to do so, however, in a secure and reliable fashion. And it is these three big trends towards more automated infrastructure, needing to lay down the foundation for a new generation of applications and a new way of delivering applications to the end user, that we think are the fundamental forces that are at work in our industry. And these forces will determine the new architecture for IT. Now today, we're here to primarily talk about the first of those transformations. How do we take existing applications and then new applications to a world of more efficient and automated infrastructure? Now, that's our company's roots. We've been working on this journey essentially for over the last decade. And we've divided this journey up into three stages. Virtualization, which is the core technology that enables this journey, comes into a business in a phase that we call IT production, where they use it really around the tier 2 and tier 3 applications. Then it moves into a phase we call business production, where this technology is now used underneath really important tier 1 applications. And finally, it's used as a way to really transform the way infrastructure is delivered to all of the enterprise. We call that IT as a service. Our company really pioneered the revolution in IT production, starting with the release of our Virtual Infrastructure 3 product that took us beyond the narrow definition of a hypervisor and really laid out how you can use a collection of hypervisors to begin that journey of automation. That technology enabled the industry to grow very rapidly to a point where, towards the end of 2009, 30% of the workloads, the server applications that run on x86 architectures, were running on virtualized infrastructure. We then strengthened that with the vSphere 4 generation, where we started to deliberately speak to the second phase of this journey, putting in place the scaling and automation features that would allow us to unabashedly address important mission-critical applications, tier 1 applications. And that technology, through the end of last year, 2009, took us to about 40% of the workloads, if you believe the numbers coming out of Gartner and IDC and others. So 40% of the world's server workloads at that point were running on virtualized infrastructure, majority of that on VMware vSphere. Now we're looking at a situation where, if we again believe the predictions from our analyst partners here, sometimes towards the end of this year or into the first half of next year, the industry will cross over the 50% threshold. It's worth taking a pause to think about that. What this means is, over the last 13 to 14 years, we have seen the emergence of a new platform that is now carrying more than 50% of the world's computing load. More than 50% of the world's back-end data center applications are now running on this new way of delivering infrastructure. And as I said, the majority of that on vSphere. I was having a conversation before this presentation with Steve, and we were trying to think of what other platform in the world's history in the space of 15 years has gone to the point where it could carry more than 50% of the available workloads. Maybe the IBM mainframe in the early 60s, maybe the Intel x86 architecture in the late 90s, but they're precious few. And it's worth actually taking some time to really just acknowledge that, and the fact that we've been able, as an industry, to grow to a fundamentally new approach for delivering applications in a, relatively speaking, short space of time. The question really becomes then, what do we do going forward? And we believe that there are two responses to that. One is we need to continue to accelerate that journey, because it means 50% means there's still 50% to go. Now, the good news is I think this journey is accelerating. Again, our analyst partners tell us that this number is going up at roughly 10% a year, and we will continue to work very hard to make sure that we can move our customers from the second phase of the journey, business production, into the point where they're operating as essentially highly automated internal service providers, call that IT as a service. But to really get to that third phase, you not only have to accelerate, you have to amplify. You have to enable that big foundation to be used in a way not just of saving low-level hardware costs, but really transforming the way that capacity is delivered to end users inside the enterprise, accelerating the change inside and then amplifying it. So with today's announcement, which is the announcement of the next major release of our vSphere product, vSphere 5, we're put into vSphere 5 many features that Steve will go through with you in a second, that directly speak to that acceleration. How do we get the other 50% of workloads now? But the other key thing that you'll see us speaking to today is the declaration of what we believe is the industry's first cloud infrastructure suite. That speaks to the amplification. Fundamentally, infrastructure is a means towards an end. Customers just want it to go away. To do that, you've really got to pull together all of the things that go on in infrastructure and make sure that you can deliver a solution that allows people to really start the journey of automation leading to acceleration amplification. So we are today, in addition to the next major release of vSphere 5, announcing the beginning of what will be a critically important journey for us, which is the creation of the Cloud Infrastructure Suite. Most of you know that I spent a lot of my life, 15 years at Microsoft, and I remember in the early 1990s when we realized that white-collar workers didn't need a collection of individual point products. They needed an integrated solution. And we declared Microsoft Office. We said we're not just going to be in the word processor business, the spreadsheet business, presentation business. We're going to be in the integrated tools business for white-collar workers. Today, we're declaring that we're going to be in the integrated infrastructure business for delivering automated data centers. That Cloud Infrastructure Suite is obviously critically anchored on vSphere 5 that provides the basic resource pooling. It's what allows you to take all of your compute, storage, and network resources and turn those into essentially a giant automated computer. On top of that, we need to layer in these additional amplification functions, allowing you, once you've created those resource pools, to use them for business continuity. So how do you make sure that you can now fail over automatically between the various resource pools that you've created to allow your business to run nonstop? Again, what I said, people want infrastructure just to go away. That means that we have to handle it to the level where it becomes a guaranteed utility. That means you have to speak to business continuity. We need a way to allow the custodians of that infrastructure to know that their infrastructure is healthy. As you create bigger and bigger pools, the custodians of the infrastructure are going to know less and less about the applications running on top of it. We can't manage in the way that we used to in the data center. We can't manage on an individual application silo basis anymore. When you're the custodian of this bigger and bigger pool of infrastructure, you need a different way to know that your infrastructure is healthy. And through the vCenter Operations Suite that we've introduced there, we provide this different way, a fundamentally different way of looking at managing and monitoring in the cloud age. We released that product earlier this year, and its first quarter of sales been very, very strongly accepted. Trust and security and compliance are obviously huge issues. As you create this bigger pool, you need to defend it more effectively. To do that, many security functions themselves have to become virtualized. When we move an application for reasons of efficiency or availability around in that pool, all of the protective functions that surround that applications, the firewalls, the load balancers, the antivirus engines, have to travel with it. So all of the security functions have to become virtualized as well, and we're working with the industry to do that. And we provide a envelope into which they can plug their virtualized security functions. We call that Vshield. So that's the next member of the suite. Finally, you have the user interface to the suite. How do we allow enterprises who are operating this capacity to provide it in a more self-service fashion to their customers? So they need a mechanism whereby people can come and self-provision out of the pool. And that layer for us is vCloud Director. That's where we allow people to do self-service, where we report back to the end users how much capacity they're using, how things are running, and where they can request policy as to how they want their applications to be run according to, quote unquote, how much they're willing to pay. So all of these things come together to deliver that highly automated, low-touch infrastructure experience. This is how over the next several years we will, quote unquote, make infrastructure go away, as far as most customers are concerned. I mentioned that you not only need to provide these capabilities, but we need to open up for customers the option, when it makes sense, for them to purchase infrastructure on a rental basis rather than purchasing the underlying hardware itself. And what customers want to do here is have the flexibility to be able to take applications from their internal infrastructure, their private cloud, and be able to slide those applications out into a public cloud. And they want that to be a business decision, not an architectural decision. To make sure that that becomes a business decision, you need to work with the service provider community so that when you slide an application from internal infrastructure into external infrastructure, it's not just the application is going, but it's all of the policy and security functions around that application, so that things behave the same way inside in a private cloud as they do externally in a public cloud. And that means we need to work with a set of service provider partners to implement the same suite in their clouds, because it is that suite of functions that gives the complete experience of how you provision, secure, monitor, and manage applications. People want to see the same experience internally and externally, and that's what will allow people to be able to associate policy with applications, slide those applications to an external service provider, and equally importantly, slide them back again if they want to take it back into their data centers or give it to a different service provider. So over the last couple of years, we've been working very closely with the service provider community to enable them to stand up in their clouds complementary corresponding function that what people will have in their private clouds. And we have a very impressive group of partners in that area that we're working with, ranging from some of the most trusted names in the industry, Verizon Computer Sciences, Singapore Telecom, now the New York Stock Exchange, all the way to a larger group of newer entrants into the space, BlueLock, Tier 3, Vertica, Hosting.com, etc. In fact, we have over 2,000 service providers a day who are transacting off our, what we call our VSP pricing model, which is the rental model that we have made available for service providers. So this is really what we're declaring today, which is the next big step forward to allow people to really be able to move through business production into the final highly automated stage of infrastructure that we call IT as a service, while opening up new options for them as to how they will strike the right balance between internally provisioned infrastructure and externally provisioned infrastructure. So that's the headline news. What I'm going to do now is ask Steve Herod, our CTO, to come up and actually take you through some of the specifics of what's behind vSphere 5 and the Cloud Infrastructure Suite. Steve.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Hi, thank you. I just wanted to step back to what Paul was saying. It's a pretty amazing experience to step back and say that we're at a point in time when nearly 50% of all server workloads are going to be running on top of VMware software. And I think that's a privilege and it's a responsibility, and it's also a big opportunity. And so I wanted to share today is how we're seizing that opportunity and really raising the bar on what you should expect from a data center as we head forward. So from a product team perspective, this is a very exciting day. This is the largest coordinated release of software that we've ever done, some brand new products, and some major revisions of our existing products. And what I want to share with you is how all these products fit together, why they matter, and how they're achieving some of the goals that Paul has set out for us. And again, there are two vectors that we're talking about when we look at this overall effort that we're doing. One is around acceleration of the journey to virtualization, making sure that we're ready to move beyond 50% of the applications. And then the other is around amplification, which means I'm now virtualized. How can I get more value out of the fact that these are now in containers that are more mobile and more protected? So let's hit on each of these axes and show why the products are delivering here. First, on the acceleration front. One of the things that we track quite a bit is the percentage of virtualization that's going on in our customers. And we ask them very regularly, what sort of applications are you running? How many of them are physical deployments? And how many of them are virtualized deployments? This shows a chart back from January of last year of what percentage of our customers said, this many of my workloads of a certain type are running in virtual machines. And the exciting thing for all of us is that we have moved very substantially in a relatively short amount of time across these very business-critical workloads. This is really moving people into that next phase of the journey where they are running business-critical applications that they can't afford to have any downtime, they can't afford to have performance loss, or anything else that might affect their business. And so as you look across these, you see a number of the toughest workloads, things that have traditionally run on Unix systems even, moving over to x86 virtualization because of these new capabilities. So when you step back and you look at why would I move things over to virtualization or why wouldn't I, there are two big challenges that people have always looked at. And the first is around performance. And this is something I've always really cared deeply about. Performance has been something that has just been a relentless focus at VMware, time after time. And here you see a little history chart of the size of a virtual machine and the capabilities that come with a virtual machine. Certainly it's easy to track how much CPU and how much virtual memory can go into each of these. Oftentimes it's the I/O performance itself that is most important as people move to the critical workloads. What's very exciting about vSphere 5 is that we've raised the bar tremendously here. And we've moved forward to create virtual machines that are truly enormous in capability and very powerful. 32 virtual processors, a terabyte of memory, and as you can see, very substantial I/O capabilities. Early on, we were getting excited as we tested these, and some of the engineers dubbed this the monster VM because it's very strong. We actually had a few engineers' children try to depict what a monster VM looked like, so I thought you might enjoy the winning picture. It's kind of a nice-looking guy. But the main point is that these virtual machines are now bigger than many of the physical machines people have historically had, and that is enabling them to run the most critical applications, accelerating the journey to virtualization. Now, the other thing you care deeply about is that these business-critical applications keep running no matter what happens. And as many of you know, we've focused on the availability capabilities of this virtualization layer and making sure that it applies to these workloads. In this release, we've certainly made major changes to the HA and FT capabilities, some things that you know about that really help you keep running when the hardware has problems. But I'm particularly excited about what we've done with Site Recovery Manager, which is a product that allows you to do disaster recovery solutions. So what this shows is a primary site and a secondary site. And as happens in these solutions, what you're doing is replicating from one side to the other. Virtualization makes that very easy because the two sides don't have to match exactly. In fact, you could have different levels of consolidation on each side. And it's this hardware independence that allows you to make sure that your applications are ready to run on the other side. What we're announcing today is the arrival of Vsphere Replication. Traditionally, we've required storage array-based replication in order to move your data and your virtual machines between sides. We've now enabled a capability to bring replication directly into the software and use the network to copy between two sites. This is important for a number of reasons. It'll allow the cost of doing replication to go down for some customers, and it allows two sites not to necessarily have the exact same storage infrastructure or even the wiring between them. So what's important about this is it'll allow you to protect more of your workloads for a lower cost. The other thing that we're doing here is after you've actually failed over and you're running instantly on the secondary site, which is continuing to be very automated, we have added a new capability that allows you to very seamlessly move back to the primary site once the trouble is gone and your primary site is able to handle it. So the arrival of automated failback is a major capability that we're moving forward on here. And I just want to step back for a moment because we've talked about this as a disaster recovery product, but what we're seeing from our customers is very exciting use of this really around general data center mobility. You can use this for disaster avoidance. I know that a power outage or a hurricane is coming somewhere. I can proactively migrate my whole data center somewhere else and be ready for it. And we're even seeing people do things like M&A, corporate acquisitions, where they're able to move one data center into their existing data center using some of these same building blocks. So it's a really interesting capability, and I see it moving beyond just disaster recovery to a new set of capabilities. And it fits under the general umbrella of making sure your business-critical applications are always available. A lot of other capabilities you'll hear about through the day, but I just want to move now to the amplification section. So we want to move more and more so that your business-critical applications are virtualized and ready for moving towards the cloud. And let's talk about that a little bit. I often get asked, what does it really mean when you're talking about cloud computing? And give me an analogy that I can think about. And there have been a lot of that have gone around when people talk about this. I actually like looking to one of our partners in Dell and thinking about how they really transform the way that you buy physical servers. To a consumer, you would go to a web page and very nicely you'd be able to configure exactly what you want. And without really knowing what's going on behind the scenes, that server would arrive in a box at your door at some point. What's going on behind the scene is really what Dell mastered, which is thinking about the inventory management and the workflow and how to do the logistics of actually satisfying that demand and ultimately getting it to the consumer in a way that they don't even know the difference. And this is exactly the way to think about what we're doing with cloud computing, either from a private cloud or a public cloud. You can almost just replace these different things, and now I'm asking for a virtual server. And behind the scenes, IT is having to do a lot of things in terms of looking at, do I have the storage capacity? Are there entitlements? Do I have the right login IDs and billing set up? Very similar. And ultimately, the consumer should only know that their request was satisfied, and then it shows up and runs. So I just want to talk about those two sides, the consumer side of the view and the producer side, and how they apply on this new product suite. So on the consumer side, one of the things that we're able to do with vCloud Director is provide a very simple portal for people to interact with and take their systems. As we launch this product, we'll have an iPad version of this, and I thought I'd just show that as one of the multiple ways that you might interact to request your virtual machines. So here it's very simple. You're logging into a system, and you're presented with something that we've learned about as a consumer, which is the App Store. We're able to see here are the pre-configured virtual machines or collection of virtual machines called vApps that I can just simply turn on and start running. And stuff behind the scenes will happen, but I'll just get it. What we also make it very easy to do is to add something new to the App Store. And this is where a lot of automation and focus goes into our work. And we want people to be able to quickly configure something else they want and have it simply show up into that App Store for them or for others to also use. So again, a very simple consumer story for how I'm interacting with the system. These are all built on top of APIs, so we'll see a lot of changes in how people can actually create these portals and work with them. But what I really want to spend time on is going behind the scenes to the producer side, which is really the hard part for providing the seamless experience. We really like to talk about what you need to do as a producer of the IT cloud in two fronts. One is really around the day one problem, as we call it. How do you respond to things instantly and make sure that you're having that agility that people associate with the cloud? But as you'll see, one of the harder problems is not just how do you get it to someone quickly, But what do you do after you've given it to them? What happens on day 2, 3, all the way through day N? So let's go to each of these in a little bit of detail. Day 1 is really about how do I respond quickly. And this is where you're provisioning virtual machines, you're choosing where they go when someone first powers it on, and also you're dealing with capacity demands that they have. So there's several things that we focused on here, but let's first stop back and say, what do we want to do around automation in this world? And many of people have written about this and talked about it, but virtualization enables automation in a way that has not been enabled in the past. And what we're finding is that a smarter infrastructure enables some of the automation steps to simply go away. We can put policy in place and let the infrastructure do things that were previously done through these automated steps. So you'll see a number of things throughout the products that are actually not just about automating the typical process, but you can actually make an even bigger deal if you just get rid of steps altogether. And that's a lot of what you'll see in the intelligent policy management that filters throughout the products that we have here. Let me give you just an example of how this will work as we head forward, and you'll see this again through the different products that we offer. What we really want to enable IT to do is create a pool of resources. And typically they create something like a gold, silver, and bronze package. And each of these pools of resources have some level of policy associated with them. They have some notion of how available they are, what security policies in place, maybe what disaster recovery is going to be happening here. Then what we really want people to do as a consumer, I should be able to say, okay, I've got this application, and maybe at one point I'm running it in test and development, and I want the cheapest thing possible. But maybe I'm now deploying it to a production cluster, and I want to, in that case, say, I want all of these traits to be satisfied. This is this policy that is attached to my workload that Paul showed that should travel with it. And it's our job at VMware to take this policy and this request for what you expect, match it up with what capabilities your infrastructure has, and ultimately choose where we place this virtual machine when it's put into the infrastructure. And this intelligent policy management is core to how we automate and how we even remove some of the steps that were previously there. You're going to see this in terms of placement, which I'll show you in a moment. And as we head forward, you're going to see us working with our partners to apply it to provisioning of the extra infrastructure services that go around your application. This includes things like what backup tools are in place, how your security is actually put in place, and where the firewalls are and how they're protecting it. So let's turn this into the product and what we actually do around the provisioning and placement. A few key capabilities I want to call out. First of all, in vCloud Director is the arrival of linked clones. And some of you have tracked this over time. This is a very important feature for making sure that you can provision very aggressively these applications when they come into the system. So a linked clone basically says when two virtual machines are quite similar, let's have them build off a single disk. And only when they start to diverge do you actually allocate the storage and start to create things that are different for VM2. Why do link clones matter? Two fronts, both of which are critical to the agility in the data center. One is I can now actually do my VM provisioning without using as much storage. We've seen great consolidation on the storage front when people are doing fairly similar workloads. And also I can respond more quickly than ever. So this allows me as an IT staff to very quickly respond to that request for a new virtual machine. And later on, as people are actually using the physical storage, I can asynchronously add it to the system. So this has been a much requested system feature that will make it both faster and more efficient in how you use your storage. Storage is also key to another the big capabilities that we're launching with this product, and this one is a very exciting release for us. In vSphere 5, we also have something called profile-driven storage and storage DRS. Now, storage is at the core of the cloud computing offerings that you have in many ways, and people are having disparate types of array systems that are in there. What we're enabling people to do is actually map their storage systems together into logical entities. You might have a collection of different fiber channel arrays, maybe a NAS array, you might have an iSCSI array, and we allow you to place them into pools themselves. And this, again, might be a Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 set of pools. Now, this matters for a couple of reasons. We're now able to dissociate where you place a virtual machine from the physical type of storage satisfying it. And this, in turn, is matching up with what type of I/O expectations you have from a performance standpoint. And this is also where we can really handle some of the challenges around capacity. We can actually look at within the tier of storage that someone wants to go to and say, there is both I/O throughput and there's capacity here for that virtual machine. And what's more, and what's very exciting here, is around storage DRS. Those of you that know our DRS technology today know that this allows you to vMotion virtual machines around according to policies you put in place. We've extended that into the storage space as well now, where we can say, I guarantee this much of storage bandwidth for a virtual machine. And if I am seeing that I'm no longer able to achieve that on a particular one of the arrays in a pool, I'll move it to another one or to another one. This is really how we can make sure that we're responding to the critical notion of I/O performance in a dynamic world where people are putting, again, very critical workloads in place. This is a great feature. I think people are going to enjoy using it. Now I want to take a quick segue into the small and medium business market for a moment here, and this is also a very interesting new offering from VMware. So a lot of what we've done builds upon the notion of shared storage. This is where vMotion and HA and FT and all of these DRS capabilities exist. But still, for the smallest and medium-sized companies that don't have either the budget or maybe the IT capabilities for some of the more advanced shared storage, we're shipping the vSphere Storage Appliance 1.0. And what this does is take vanilla servers that have drives directly built into them, and we're able to use some magic to bring these drives together and present the illusion of shared storage. And this is replicated in a way that makes it very available. This is dead simple to install and use. You simply put in a CD, and it will aggregate these individual disk arrays together and make this virtual storage in place. And then in turn, based on this very simple model, we're able to use these capabilities. And we think this is going to be very important for bringing the levels of availability and security that SMB market people have and need, but without some of the IT capabilities and cost that they are not able to have at this point. So this will also be a very interesting product and very essential to going into a smaller set of customers that haven't used the higher-end capabilities to date. Now, the other thing I want to talk about, again, on this day one challenge is around capacity. What we want to do is make sure that consumers can get their virtual machines as quickly as possible, but we want IT to be very flexible in how they add new storage and they add new of the servers that are needed to satisfy that. So what we're launching also with this release is something called Auto Deploy. Today, when you want to add new horsepower, new CPU and memory capabilities, you manually install it or you go through some sort of script and put it in the system. Auto Deploy is incredibly cool. It's basically using something called Pixie Boot and allows you to simply turn on a server, and it will reach out and grab both the image and the configuration that it needs to fit seamlessly into the pool. And the end result here is that I've been able to very easily and quickly add new capabilities and new horsepower to the system and do so in a very aggressive manner. And what's more, by having the configuration built in here, we can avoid some of the manual mistakes that can come when you're rapidly responding to some of the demands placed on the IT staff. So again, a very easy way to add capacity to the cloud as you need to. So that was a quick look at some of the features around day one. How do I quickly provision and place virtual machines as they're needed? How do I add capacity? This actually has been kind of the domain of a lot of the public clouds to date, and I think that's very important to think about. A lot of them have made it very easy to get into the system. But what happens days after that when you're running and new things have come into the system? And this is where I really think this cloud infrastructure suite excels. And I want to talk a little bit about two capabilities here around performance and security as you go forward with a virtual machine that's been deployed. Now, this is something that I've heard about a lot, and there's actually a fun name for this challenge that people have. When you have a cloud that's running and people have put new virtual machines into it, you can sometimes be susceptible to what's called the noisy neighbor problem. That's our friend, the virtual machine again. So this is the problem that someone has come onto your shared infrastructure and is using a lot of resources and essentially can deny services to some of the other virtual machines. With our new network and storage I/O controls, we can actually ensure that each virtual machine gets exactly what amount of entitlement to this I/O capability that it should have. This applies on both the network and storage side. And so when we turn this on, even if you have this noisy neighbor off there chattering, it's kept in check, and your VIP workloads are continuing to get exactly what you set them up for, and they're achieving the performance that they expect to have. This is an incredibly challenging set of system software problems that our engineers have been working on for several years now. And we think this is really going to help you move to a shared infrastructure when having those most demanding of applications. Now, the other part I wanted to talk about, and probably the top three issues that come off when you talk about the cloud with many customers, is around the security front. And security is never just one thing that you do to fix it. You have to do it in depth. And this starts with the hardware. Actually, in this release, we're leveraging Intel's new TXT capabilities, first of all, to just attest that the vSphere that you have there is the one that you expect to have. And from there, you build up a number of additional security capabilities. So what we've already announced through our Vshield program is a set of different ways of protecting different customers or different applications from one another from a security perspective when they're in the system. We do this first through Vshield Edge, which allows you to create virtual data centers. This is essentially the edge of a data center that has firewalls, and we even put load balancing and other capabilities there. We've also made it very easy to put trust zones within a virtual data center. This is how we do automatic firewalling around a set of cooperating applications. taking a multi-tier application and making it protected and making just those important ports open that need to be open. We're also announcing something new with this product. It really looks at what people call the nosy neighbor, which is really hard to say, noisy neighbor and nosy neighbor. But they're the two challenges you think about when you have a shared infrastructure. What if someone, either maliciously or not, is trying to look into the data in the other virtual machines? And so we're rolling out something new here, which is sensitive data discovery built directly into the system. What we're able to do with this is take governance and compliance requirements, various certifications, whether it be PCI or some of the various ones in the banking or healthcare space, and recognize what that says about data that is allowed to be inside of a system. We can actually now look into the system and actually look at the type of data that's in place, and we can recognize that type of data that is actually targeted by one of these different certification or governance requirements. This is then flagged to the administrator who knows what's there. This doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad, but by knowing that that particular software is in a virtual machine, this will in turn allow them to perhaps consolidate these into a specific trust zone, an area where they've actually been able to put the virtual machines with sensitive data, and then in turn put additional security or auditing in place. So again, we think this is a very important thing to think about in a shared infrastructure, making sure it has not only the quick speed to getting things in place, but having those day-in challenges around ongoing performance guarantees and availability guarantees, as well as security guarantees. So with that is a very quick look at delivering this new foundation for the new IT stack. As Paul said, this is our intent to move towards a suite that really helps you manage your cloud infrastructure in a new way. I just wanted to step back and talk about the magnitude of this for one more moment. We've had a product team working on this for quite a long time now, and we just sort of did the numbers a little bit earlier. This represents more than 1 million engineering hours, which is really hard to imagine if you can think about the amount of work that's gone into this. And I've only been able to scratch the surface here. You'll see through a number of other talks later today, as well through VMworld, that we've delivered literally hundreds of additional capabilities, of which I've highlighted around 8 here today. But what's also important about this is that we know that as we move to more than 50% of applications running on VMware software, the way that we work with our quality and the way that we work with our partnerships are critical. So we've had more than 2 million quality testing hours on top of this, in addition to our beta programs, making sure that this is a trusted platform and that you can count on your highest end applications running there. And then last but not least, we're part of a huge ecosystem. More than 2,000 partner certifications are coming out with this, from the hardware level to management tools and applications. And I want to thank all the engineers, all of our quality testing team, as well as all of our partners for pulling together and doing what I think is a very exciting release today. So thanks very much, and I'd like to welcome Rick Jackson to stage now.
Thanks, Steve. So, a vision for more efficient, more agile IT operations. An impressive set of new and advanced features and capabilities, creating the industry's most complete cloud infrastructure suite. Today, we're very proud of the technology advancements that we're making in the cloud infrastructure arena. But we also know, in working with our customers, that there are other inhibitors that our customers are facing in being able to take full advantage of cloud computing. And one of those is the complex world of licensing. Now, as we know, our industry has traditionally licensed based on physical capabilities, physical constraints. And what we've heard from customers is that this makes it extremely difficult when you're trying to create a cloud computing environment and pool your infrastructure. That when you want to be able to upgrade your servers and take advantage of the accelerated delivery of highly advanced, highly capable hardware that wasn't even conceived of just 2-3 years ago, that having to deal with software licensing constraints in this physical world is preventing them from taking advantage of this new world. So just like we advance the technology, and we are a leader and innovator in the technology arena, VMware is committed to working within the industry to advance our thinking on licensing for this new cloud era. So with vSphere 5 Generation 5, we are removing the physical constraints of our licensing so that now our customers can take full advantage of their pooled infrastructure with vSphere 5 without regard to worrying about CPUs and core counts within their compute environment. And we're introducing the notion of pooled VRAM as a licensing component. Now, we all know that RAM in the physical world is the amount of memory dedicated to a machine, which doesn't map well to pooled cloud infrastructure. Virtual RAM is the amount of virtual memory allocated to a running virtual machine. But again, the premise, the foundation of cloud computing is based on a pooled shared services architecture. So our licensing model is based on pooled VRAM across the virtual infrastructure implementation, managed by vCenter Server, so that our customers have the freedom and flexibility to upgrade their compute environment at will, to take advantage of new advanced, more powerful capabilities in an automated environment that manages the memory allocation across all the servers in the pool so that they are also getting the maximum utilization of their software licensing. We believe this is a much simpler model to deploy and manage within the IT environment to help our customers accelerate to cloud computing architectures. Similarly, from our customers, we heard that our previous packaging was somewhat confusing, trying to understand the differences between the different levels and packages available with vSphere. So again, doing what's best for the customers, we relooked at our packaging. We are moving from 6 packages down to 5. We have eliminated the vSphere Advanced Edition, and the good news is that all those customers that have had vSphere Advanced who are current on subscription and support are automatically now entitled to the more powerful vSphere Enterprise Edition. So it's not just technology, it's how do we make it easier for customers to purchase, to install, to deploy, and to manage their virtual infrastructure so that we can accelerate that journey to the full promise of cloud computing. Now, what we've done here today is really just scratch the surface of all the new and great capabilities we're bringing to market. So I want to encourage you all to join us at VMworld. We'll be in Las Vegas this year, August 29th, and then in Copenhagen in October for our European audiences. There's where you'll get in-depth information on all the new product releases as well as the entire VMware portfolio, sharing best practices and expertise with the experts from VMware, from our partners, and hearing from customers themselves. And of course, one of the most valuable components of VMworld is being able to get your hands on the products through the self-service labs.